Welcome, folks. Welcome, everybody, as you're coming on. Welcome and good morning. Go ahead and turn your cameras on if you can. We would love to see your faces as we start the training this morning. Hi, Judy. Hi, Conrado. Hi. Welcome. I see Nicole. Christine, hi. Welcome. So we wanted to welcome everybody and have you go ahead and add your voice to the chat so we can kind of get to know each other and get to know you. And so we're inviting you to go ahead and put your name, your location, including the native land that you're currently on, and something beautiful that you see outside your window, or if no windows, maybe something in your space. All creative aging programs, are really about working in community. So in honor of the communities where you live, please go ahead and use the map that Vinny just put into the chat to acknowledge the land of the Indigenous people to whom the land belongs that you are calling in from today. Annie's putting in an example there in the chat. For me, I'm Julie Klein. My pronouns are she, her. I'm calling in from West Orange, New Jersey. I'm on the land of the Munsee Lenape people. And out my window at the moment, I can see sort of a tangle of tree branches with a little white cloudy sky behind. So go ahead and add that to the chat and we'll get started in just a moment. Great, so Annie has said she's in Brooklyn in the land of the Munsee Lenape people, and she can see the pine tree out her window. That's very unusual for Brooklyn. Thanks, Annie. Nicole sees a crow and blue skies. Crow, blue skies. Sounds like an amazing title of a poem. Hi, Christine. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
You are.
Thank you. A ton of great books in my office. That's great. That's a beautiful thing to see. Rhina from the Bronx. Monsape people and cloudy skies. Vinny's here from Washington Heights in Manhattan, land of the Wappinger and Munsee Lenape people. Lots of gray inside, but green plant outside, but green plants inside. I love that. Hey, Brian. Cheyenne, the land of the Eastern Shoshone. Blue skies, no wind, pine tree by our building, and a flagpole. And Nicole's here from Cody. That's great. And just a reminder, go ahead and make sure to have some paper or a notebook and a pen or pencil available for some of our activities this morning. So definitely have a notebook or paper and a pen or pencil available. Hi, Deborah. I see Sherry. Richard, welcome. Okay, great. So as you're coming in, we're just asking people to put in your name, the location, including the native land you are currently on and calling in from, and something beautiful you can see out your window or just directly in your space, like books, green plants. Judy's calling in from Pinedale, snow and pine trees and mountains. Beautiful. You all are seeing very different views than we are here in the East Coast. It's beautiful to read these. Conrado, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. From Casper and of the Crow, Arapaho and Eastern Shoshone. Blue skies outside, slight breeze, and fluorescent lights inside. Thank you. Go ahead and keep those intros coming. We are going to go ahead and get started. And we're going to have some more time to be able to really share and talk with you today. Hi, Deborah from Rock Springs Sunshine. Thank you. Hi, Richard. Great. So hello, everybody. Welcome. And thank you so much for being here for today's Creative Aging in Wyoming Libraries Initiative training. My name is Julie Klein. I'm the Education Associate here at Lifetime Arts, and I'm here with Vinny Mraz, who is a Lifetime Arts trainer. Vinny's going to take us through a couple of housekeeping items before we get started.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning.
So this may be some review for you, but in case you're still getting used to some of the updates on Zoom, I'll go through some examples for you, just how to orient your screen. So today we are going to ask for full participation all throughout. You won't have to just sit and listen to us the whole time. We will involve you as well. So in order to fully participate today, here's just a few things to keep in mind. We're going to be sharing our screen all throughout. Like you're seeing now, you should be able to see that slide up there. We recommend that you use the side-by-side viewing mode so that you can see both the screen as well as the participants in the meeting today. If you don't know how to do this, up at the top right by where it says that it should say you're sharing or you're viewing Nathan's screen up at the top there, you click on View Options and the drop-down menu at the top of the screen. It will say side-by-side mode, and that'll put you into the mode so you can see both the slide and the people in here. You can also slide a bar over so that you can minimize or maximize the slide screen and the participants, just so that you can adjust the view to your comfort level. You can also change the view on the side too. Under there, you have the option of either looking at this in gallery view or speaker view. Again, up to you, whichever one works best for you. Overall, we do ask that you just keep yourself muted all throughout unless you've been otherwise directed to, just to eliminate any background distractions or any noise coming through. And as Julie said, having your camera on, we really appreciate it. It helps us to make us feel as if we are in all the same room together. If you are seeing, you may already know this, but if you see a slash through your microphone or your camera, that means that your camera or your mic is off. If there's no slash through there, that does mean that your video is on and your microphone is unmuted. Just something to keep in mind. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and rename yourself so people know your name and your organization. And you can do this if you click on the Participants tab down at the bottom, and then you click on the button that says More to the right of your name. You'll see in the drop-down menu there, it says the option Rename, just like you can see on the slide there. And you can put in your name, your pronouns, and then also any organization that you're affiliated with. And if you have any questions throughout the day, they may come up all throughout the training over the next couple of days. Feel free to use the chat function and just chat it. Make sure you're chatting to everyone, not a private chat. You can put it right in the chat as they're coming up, and we will either address them in the moment if it's applicable at that time. Otherwise, one of us will be collecting all of these questions as well, and you'll see in our agenda there's a couple of moments for Q&A today. We'll address any questions that you have during that time if we don't get to it right then. So this will be, again, something you can do all throughout the 3 days with us. The other thing too is that we'll be using breakout rooms all throughout for smaller group discussions. So just make sure that you're ready to participate in those breakout rooms, and we'll give you a heads up before those are happening. And then lastly, if you want to save any of, if there's things in the chat that are pertinent to you and you want to save that, you can do so. Just go to the drop down once you have the chat menu open, click on the chat box, and then click on the 3 dots on the bottom right. You can select Save Chat, and then the entire chat will be saved to your computer so that you'll have that for future reference. Back to you, Julie.
Thanks so much, Vinny. Welcome all. And if you've just come in, please go ahead and put your name, your location in the chat, including the native land that you're calling in from, and something beautiful you might see out the window or in your immediate space. We've heard about books, plants, as well as incredible mountains that might be out your view. And we're very jealous of calling in from the East Coast over here. I wanted to introduce a couple more people, important people here on the call. And first of all, I'm going to start with the Wyoming State Development Manager, Brian Green, just to give a little bit of a welcome to you all.
Thank you, Julie, and good morning, everyone. I did remember to unmute myself. Yes, okay. I want to say welcome. Particularly, this is going to be fun. I'm participating with you in this training on the morning sessions this week, so I'm looking forward to it. It's been a long time coming. The Lifetime Arts people have been great to work with, and you'll see that for yourself as this week progresses. And there's all sorts of exciting things that are going to be happening in Wyoming. It's great to be able to bring this to Wyoming. It's kind of a unique thing. Tomorrow I celebrate 29 years here at the Wyoming State Library, and good things continue to happen, and I'm glad to be a part of this. So enjoy yourselves, have fun, and let's make good things happen in Wyoming.
Thanks, Brian. Happy anniversary. Happy work anniversary almost.
Thank you.
That's exciting. Great. I wanted to introduce a couple more Lifetime Arts folks on the call. We have Nathan Majoros, who is our Deputy Director. He's going to take you through some more info in just a second. I also wanted to introduce Raina Santos, who's going to be one of our facilitators today. But first, Nathan, go ahead and share some information about our portal.
So as you all should have received an email from me, I hope, last week about our services portal, which I'm going to display on this screen. Just give me a thumbs up if you can see this real quick. So what the services portal is a basically one-stop place for you all to receive information about these trainings, including resources, and we're also going to be including some, homework for you all to do, which is essentially reviewing some videos, as you can see here. There will also be resources that we're going to post here. In addition to getting your resources, links to each session for the day, as well as these videos. After this training, we're also going to be putting the recordings and the slides up here so that you can go back and review any information that we talked about, and we'll continue to post additional resources after this training. If you do have any issues accessing the portal, not being able to find the information on here, I do encourage you to reach out to me directly. Julie just posted my email in the chat, and majoros@lifetimearts.org, and I can get you squared away with whatever you need.
Thanks so much, Nathan. Yes, we're really using the portal as sort of your one-stop shop, everybody, for all information about Lifetime, information about this initiative, and then these great asynchronous source resources. So some great videos, some blogs, other information, other important links to just great information that really supplements and really has become a deep part of our training. So we really want you to be able to access that and access it easily. So if you have any issues, please write to Nathan directly so that you can access all that great stuff. Great, we're going to move on to our goals for the whole training, and then we'll go into our agenda for today. So over the next 3 days, we're going to cover a lot of ground. So our goals are that you will, one, be able to be introduced to the creative aging field. We're also going to take a lot of time to analyze ageism and its impact on program design and delivery. We're going to hope you're going to walk away understanding the creative aging program models, and this is both in person and via remote delivery. So we're really going to talk about both during this training. We're going to actually have you experience hands-on how some of these best practices in program design work in creative aging programs. We're going to start off tomorrow with you actually joining in on a creative aging class. So that's going to be fun and also illustrate a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about. We're going to learn, of course, about the Creative Aging in Wyoming Libraries initiative, more details on that, how you can be involved. We're going to talk a lot about how to support the program, marketing, recruitment, tech support if you are working remotely, and also working with the teaching artist. And finally, we're going to talk about building program infrastructure in your program so that you can really move towards sustainability and a long-term future for your creative aging programs.
So we'll cover a lot of ground, as Julie said, but today we'll take the first step, and here's our agenda just for today. So we'll start the morning with an exploration of ageism. We'll take a break after that. Then we're going to talk about the creative aging arts education models. We'll take another break. And then this afternoon, we'll cover safe planning and older adult learners, and then get into more specific information about creative aging in the Wyoming Libraries Initiative program. And then finally, like we mentioned earlier, we'll have a Q&A and a wrap up before we send you on your way before we meet all again tomorrow.
Thanks, Vinny. So we're going to start with a real exploration of ageism, the ideas of ageism, and how this shows up in your life, and also the ways in which ageism might impact program design. So I want everybody to just take a moment to check in with yourself right now. In this moment, sitting or standing, where you are in space, what age do you feel like on the inside today? What is your internal age? And this is really just capturing this moment in time. Just take a moment, check in with yourself. What age do you feel like on the inside today? Once you think you have a number, and this is of course just your own choice, what does the number feel like today? I see that Christine already put it in the chat. That's great. If you do though have a piece of paper, I'm going to ask that you take a piece of paper and write that number very large on the piece of paper so that we can hold them up to our web cameras if our cameras are on and share that with everybody. So I'm going to do the same. I'm lucky enough to have a big marker, so feel free to use a big marker too. Great. Yep. And if you don't have your camera on, please put it into the chat. All right. I'm gonna make everybody big so I can see you. Okay, great. I see Nicole put 53 in the chat. Christine put 22. I see Annie says 70. Conrado 35. Nathan's got a 35. A lot of 30-year-olds here today. Brenda says 50. Judy 38. Vinny's over there at 30. Ryan at 32. Nice. Brian's feeling a nice 45. Deborah 39. Okay, great. Okay, wonderful. Some of these are so specific and I love that. So Judy, if I can call on you, can you hold your number up again? 38, right? Is that it? 38. Yeah, so you were just one off of me. 39. Okay, Judy, could I ask you to unmute yourself and maybe you can tell me why that number today?
I'm being optimistic.
I love it. I love it. But why did that come to you, you feel like? Or what does that number mean to you?
Because I wanted to say 30 and I thought that's way too out there. And I'm a little achy today, so I couldn't push it any further than that.
Sure. Okay. So feeling maybe some physical signs that's exactly what my thinking actually with 39 too. I was like a little achy, but sounds like you're also feeling a sense of optimism.
Yeah. I feel like, you always think your life is going slower than it really is. So, you still think you can do the things that you used to be able to do. And so, yeah, it's an optimistic number.
No, but I like that. And I like that. So for you, 38 has some like optimism and looking forward. That's what that number means to you.
Yeah.
Great. Deborah, what was your number? Would you mind sharing that with me again? Oh, would you mind unmuting yourself just so I can hear you? No worries. Thank you.
It was also 39.
Great. It's a popular
I went
number
back
today.
to a time when I was looking ahead and thinking, I need to accomplish something before I hit 40. And I have not shown my artwork for a long time. And I put together an exhibit and showed it at the local library. And that was before I was working for the library system. So learning something new, I always think of myself as a lifelong learner. And this is putting me back to that time of when I had just finished working on my master's and I was going back to my artwork.
I love it. So for you, 39 also has an association with it, which is like this moment where you really accomplished something great and you really pushed yourself to do something. And that's the association for you around that number. And so I love that. That's a beautiful idea. Somebody else want to share about their number? Was it surprising to you when you checked in with yourself, or was it no big deal? Conrado, can I call on you?
Sure.
What was your number? If you remind me.
I put 35 down.
Sure.
Had you asked me a month ago, I probably would have been closer to 30, which is what I almost am. I just, achy body. I feel like my mind is working a little bit slower right now. And it just kind of feels like I'm not, I don't know. It's after watching that ageism video, it's kind of like, oh, I guess, yeah, we do kind of picture ourselves older when we don't quite feel like ourselves. So a month ago, probably a little bit closer to my actual age, but this week, definitely closer to that 35, maybe even closer to 40.
Great. Well, thank you for segueing so beautifully into what we're going to talk about. But also, I think that's so interesting, right? That we just tend to associate feeling bad with the older ages. Yeah, and we might. These are, you're projecting forward. That's not an age you are yet, but you're imagining it feeling a certain way, right? Which may or may not end up being true when you are 35 or 40. You have no way to know, but our guesses tend to be formed based on maybe some of these environmental, societal ways we look at age. Great, Vinny's going to take us into the next section. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks, everybody. So the next step here is to think about some of the language around age. And so I'm going to ask you at this point to put into the chat anything that you have either heard that is ageist, or maybe you have said it yourself. So for example, oh, you look so young, or the phrase age before beauty. I know when I've met some participants in classes that I've taught, one gentleman told me, oh, I'm actually 83 years old. And my reaction was, whoa, crazy. You don't look a day over, I don't know, 60. I think he looked very young. So anything like that, you can pop it into the chat. So Annie, yeah, great. She's too old to wear that. Excellent example. Julie, old people are so cute. Mm-hmm. Rhina, you look so great for your age. Yeah. What's your skincare routine? Mm-hmm, definitely. Anything else? Anybody have any other examples? You've either maybe something someone has said to you or you've said about somebody else. Deborah, he doesn't look that old. Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, kind of going back to this association of age and physical appearance or ability. Christine, you're so old. Oh man, that one's gotta hurt. That one's probably not so fun. You're too old to be a bone marrow donor. Wow, Brian. Yeah, that's going into a whole other conversation about age and ability again. Judy, I wouldn't have guessed you were blank. Mm-hmm, definitely. Guessing someone's age or feeling like you can look at someone and tell their age. Annie chiming in with boomer. Yep, the labels that we're using for all the generations or the way that we address people and group them together. How do you stay so young? Millennials are the me generation. You'll understand when you're older. Deborah, someone having a senior moment, definitely. Good, yeah, these are all great examples, everybody. Thank you for sharing all of these. All old timers, yes, definitely. Again, talking about the way we group people together through language and the way that language itself can be perpetuating ageism. So we're gonna let's take a step back for a second. And I wanna just define what this word means that we've been throwing around. So I think, do we have our slides back, Nathan? Perfect, thank you so much. So here's the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition of ageism. It is a prejudice or discrimination against a particular age group and especially the elderly. So this is going to be our opportunity today to start to explore ageism a little bit more and what it means in our own life. And I think some of you maybe, Conrado, I know you said you got to watch this video, so maybe some of you have seen it already. We're gonna watch a little bit of this together just to make sure we're all on the same page. It's a video from Ashton Applewhite. And who is she? She's the author of This Chair Rocks, a manifesto against ageism. And she's also a spokesperson for a movement to mobilize against discrimination on the basis of age. In 2016, she joined the PBS site Next Avenue's annual list of 50 influencers in aging. And she was also their influencer of the year for her expertise on ageism. So we're gonna watch some of this video now and hear what she has to say about growing older. Let's take a look at Ashton.
What's one thing that every person in this room is going to become? Older. And most of us are scared stiff at the prospect. How does that word make you feel? I used to feel the same way. What was I most worried about? Ending up drooling in some grim institutional hallway. And then I learned that only 4% of older Americans are living in nursing homes, and the percentage is dropping. What else was I worried about? Dementia. Turns out that most of us can think just fine to the end. Dementia rates are dropping too. The real epidemic is anxiety over memory loss. I also figured that old people were depressed because they were old and they were going to die soon. It turns out that the longer people live, the less they fear dying, and that people are happiest at the beginnings and the ends of their lives. It's called the U-curve of happiness, and it's been borne out by dozens of studies around the world. You don't have to be a Buddhist or a billionaire. The curve is a function of the way aging itself affects the brain. So I started feeling a lot better about getting older, and I started obsessing about why so few people know these things. The reason is ageism, discrimination and stereotyping on the basis of age. We experience it anytime someone assumes we're too old for something, instead of finding out who we are and what we're capable of, or too young. Ageism cuts both ways. All isms are socially constructed ideas: racism, sexism, homophobia, and that means we make them up, and they can change over time. All these prejudices pit us against each other to maintain the status quo, like auto workers in the US competing against auto workers in Mexico instead of organizing for better wages. We know it's not okay to allocate resources by race or by sex. Why should it be okay to weigh the needs of the young against the old? All prejudice relies on othering, seeing a group of people as other than ourselves, other race, other religion, other nationality. The strange thing about ageism, that other is us. Ageism feeds on denial, our reluctance to acknowledge that we are going to become that older person. It's denial when we try to pass for younger, or when we believe in anti-aging products, or when we feel like our bodies are betraying us simply because they are changing. Why on earth do we stop celebrating the ability to adapt and grow as we move through life? Why should aging well mean struggling to look and move like younger versions of ourselves? It's embarrassing to be called out as older until we quit being embarrassed about it. And it's not healthy to go through life dreading our futures. The sooner we get off this hamster wheel of age denial, the better off we are. Stereotypes are always a mistake, of course, but especially when it comes to age, because the longer we live, the more different from one another we become, right? Think about it. And yet, we tend to think of everyone in a retirement home as the same age, old. When they can span 4 decades, can you imagine thinking that way about a group of people between the ages of 20 and 60? When you get to a party, do you head for people your own age? Have you ever grumbled about entitled millennials? Have you ever rejected a haircut or a relationship or an outing because it's not age appropriate? For adults, there's no such thing. All these behaviors are ageist. We all do them, and we can't challenge bias unless we're aware of it. Nobody's born ageist, but it starts in early childhood, around the same time attitudes towards race and gender start to form, because negative messages about late life bombard us from the media and popular culture at every turn, right? Wrinkles are ugly. Old people are pathetic. It's sad to be old.
All right. Thank you, Ashton. So we're going to have a little bit of time. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to use some breakout rooms now. And we're going to go in there and just talk a little bit more about ageism, and to kind of break down some of the things that were brought up in our conversation as well as in that video. Julie's putting in the chat right now the questions that we're going to discuss, and you'll be in the room with facilitators, so we'll reiterate these for you. But here's what we're going to be thinking about. What's something new from this video that you hadn't thought of before? When have you seen or experienced ageism, and how does it make you feel? And how might art learning and making combat against ageism? So those are the 3 questions we'll take a moment to discuss. We'll take about 15 minutes, and we'll just have a little discussion, and then we'll come back and share what we've discovered with one another. So you should be getting a breakout room invitation from Nathan shortly, and once you do, you can join and we'll have a discussion.
Thank you all so much. We were just in the middle of, the end of a last sentence that Brenda was sharing with us. Thank you, Brenda. It always feels like there's never enough time in our groups, especially with such a big topic. But I did want to welcome our facilitators to sort of share out, a couple of big points that came up in that a really important conversation. Raina, can I start with you?
Absolutely. Well, I do have to say there was a slight, for complete transparency, a slight technical difficulty, but that we're still be able to talk through a computer is miraculous. But we had a really wonderful conversation, I think. That one of the things that was that they really learned from the video, something new, were all the stats. Really from the beginning, how Ashton is just, listing all of these things, that really deal with individuals' worst fear of getting older. And so that was really eye-opening for everyone in the group. And, people in the group did share how they've experienced ageism, not just, being told something, being valued for looking younger, but more importantly, how torn they felt for maybe not changing how they did a class, or how to make sure that everyone in class could actually do the art form. And lastly, really talking about how can we fight ageism with art making. Is just making it equitable for everyone regardless of age. Creating and planning a class that everyone can do, and at the end of the day, that art really puts you on the same playing field. And and that it's everyone's own perspective, and to be able to really tap into people's individual creativity. That's what we talked about.
That's great, Rena. Thank you. Vinny, you want to share with your group, for your group?
Sure. So we had a really interesting conversation that I think we got down to the sort of root of all of this was just assumptions. The thing that kept coming up was assumptions. What do you assume about ability? What do you assume about knowledge? Or what do you assume about the course of your life planning, and how sort of major milestones happen throughout your life? Some of the things that we talked about in terms of how we combat ageism with art making is this idea that this is a time for opportunity and discovery, and maybe not just for everybody else, but also for yourself, and that self narrative of, oh, I'm too old to do that kind of art making, or I've never done it before, I don't know what I'm doing. There was an example of a gentleman who came to a program and learned wood carving and wood burning, and then that led him to painting, and it led him to other artistic art forms. That without that first step, there was that narrative perhaps of, I'm not sure, I don't know that I can do this. So really just the other side of that, celebrating the things that we can do, as opposed to the example came up of, like, with children, we're so often celebrating all of the things that they can accomplish, all of the work that they make. And with adults, we have this critical eye that steps back and kind of can become a barrier. So using this art making as celebratory, and finding the joy or the excitement in making things, and using that as a way to combat ageism, so that it isn't just like, you're too old to be drawing that way, aren't you? Like, no, we're all learning. We're all in a process of always learning.
I love that. That's beautiful. I wish we could all just celebrate each other the way we celebrate children. That's across the board. Thank you. Thanks for that, Vinny, and thank you, Vinny's group. So we had a really wide-ranging conversation in my group. Really wonderful. What came up a lot was sort of the idea that there are kind of both sides of every issue. Brian was speaking about, and also Brenda mentioned this too, in terms of the ideas of, that there's some preparation one needs to do when one is getting older, in terms of retirement and things like that. Some things that we need to be aware of, and that something that might be frustrating to one person, like, I don't want to be helped, I don't want to be assumed that I need help carrying things because I'm still strong, might for somebody else be like, hey, now I get a lot of extra help because I'm older, and now when I need help, people come and help me, and that's a positive thing, and that there's a continuum, and that everybody's an individual in terms of how they're going to approach those things or what they're going to feel, and that we want to treat people as individuals rather than make assumptions. That was that word that came up in Vinny's group too. There was a lot of excitement about this program, about in the Vinny's group was talking about too, the idea that these particular folks that Ashton is talking about, folks that aren't in nursing homes, that are living independently, but are, especially during COVID, extremely isolated, fearful, not going out, that these programs can really be just, that interaction time, that actual, face-to-face time, if possible. That was great. And we talked a lot about, millennials too, and our assumptions about the younger generation. And once we tell everybody, oh, millennials are lazy, or can we instead examine our thinking? you know, there are differences between generations, that's true, but only when we don't, rather than saying, oh, it's bad that they think that way, can we instead ask, like, well, why do they think that way? You know, they've grown up in a different world than we have, so maybe they work differently. Not that they're lazy, but they work differently. Can we ask questions rather than, again, make these like negative assumptions? I mean, that was only a bit of what we talked about, but all really, really great stuff. Thank you all so much. Thank you for sharing. We are going to go ahead and move now into a break. So we're going to take a little bit of a break. It's a 5-minute full break. So let's say we'll be back at, I want to make sure I get your all, we're going to be back in 5 minutes from now. What's your all time zone timing? Maybe 5 minutes from now, someone wants to put that. What would 5 minutes from now be in your time zone? I don't want to get it wrong. 9:55? 9:55, is that right? 9:55, you're going to come back at 9:55, but in just 3 minutes, you can choose to participate in a guided stretch break that Vinny is going to lead you through. So you've got 5 full minutes until we're back with the slides and such. But if you want a stretch break, come on back in 3 minutes. Nathan's going to play some music and we'll see you in 5.
Hi, everybody. If you have found your way back to your computer, you can join me in a quick stretch. If you're still doing your thing, no worries. You still have a couple more minutes before we are back in session. So if you're here with me now, we'll just take a moment to stretch out. So you can choose to do this either seated, or if you want to stand up, by all means do that. But just starting with feeling your feet on the floor. If you're wearing shoes, feeling your feet in your shoes and connected to the floor. And if you're seated, feeling your butt on your chair and just grounding yourself for a second. So connecting and bringing awareness to your feet on the floor, your butt in the chair if you're sitting. And visualizing a nice long spine. I know in this day and age, I am very guilty of the computer slouch all day long. So visualizing that nice long spine, you don't have to hold a posture at all, but just visualizing your spine nice and tall in your full height. And when you're ready, you're going to take a deep breath in through your nose. Raise your arms up over your head, and we're going to exhale over to the side in a nice arch stretch here. So stretching out through your left side ribs, your left hand is up overhead. If you want a little bit of a deeper stretch here, you can bring your right hand up on the top of your head and just gently place it on your head to stretch a little bit more through the neck. You're not gonna, don't crank it down. This is just a little extra weight to help with that stretch. Take another deep breath in through your nose. Exhale, back to center, and let's do the other side. So in through the nose, arms up overhead, and over to your right hand side, stretching through those right side ribs. If you want, you can even pat it out a little bit, encourage lots of breath and space here in between your ribs and your lungs. Take one more deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. Excellent. And exhale back down to center. And before we come back in with your, you can get a little bit of heat between your hands and just gently give your face a nice pat, wake up your face, wake up the back of your head, the back of your neck, your shoulders, your arms, get some blood going here. So you're nice and alert and ready again for some more information that we've got for you. Excellent. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for taking that time to stretch it out. And we are back. We are now back, and we're going to move into our next section. So this bit of the training today, we're going to talk about creative aging arts education model so that you have a little bit of a clear understanding of the goals for these types of programs with older adults. So let's dig into it. Why is everyone talking about aging? Worldwide, our population is aging due to a few reasons. First being falling fertility rates, people are having fewer children, and rising longevity. So putting it simply, people are generally living longer and healthier lives. In this day and age, we do have to acknowledge, of course, that COVID is projected to reduce life expectancy for older adults by about a year. And that's according to the official Journal of National Academy of Sciences. Generally speaking, however, people are living longer, but of course, COVID has affected these statistics a little bit. Overall, according to the US Census Bureau, starting in 2030, older Americans will make up 21% of the population, and that's up from 15% today. By 2034, the number of adults ages 65 and older will outnumber those under the age of 18. So this demographic shift is not a temporary one, but it's a permanent shift towards an older population overall. We also want to acknowledge some equity issues around age as well. Black, Indigenous, and people of color, as well as lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender individuals constitute a significant and rapidly growing portion of older adults. In 2010, people of color made up 20% of the nation's total 65 plus demographic. That's a figure that will more than double by 2050. Advocates and aging service providers say that LGBTQIA+, older adults and older adults of color face significant disparities in health access, economic security, housing, employment, community support, and more. And so it's really important that in our creative aging work that we address these inequalities and we ensure that arts programming is accessible for the full span of the diverse older adults and is responsive to their needs as well. Let me just see if that is, we can pop this in the chat here for you, just the sources for this information in case you are interested in doing a little bit more research here.
I'll pop in those links, Minnie.
Oh, thanks, Julie. I was just about to get to the second one. Thank you so much. So Julie will put that second one in there for you in case you want to look at these statistics any further. But to keep moving forward, what is creative aging? We define it as professionally led instructional arts programs that build skills over time across all arts disciplines. So in short, it's arts education for older adults. In the Lifetime Arts model, we advocate that there are at least 8 sequential sessions, that they are at least 90 minutes each, and that it does culminate with a public event of some kind. Creative aging is not just a concept, but it's also an emerging field in which a variety of organizations are doing meaningful work and are providing opportunities for creative expression through visual, literary, and performing arts. The activities are based on scientific research, and they emphasize the factors that are crucial for positive aging, which are learning skills and building social connections. For this training, we just want to start by clarifying a few things. There are a number of different types of creative aging programs that are out there, and we just want to focus in on the one that we're covering in the next 3 days. What we're looking at Lifetime Arts is arts education program for older adults. There's a lot of really extraordinary work happening in creative aging and arts therapies, and much of that work happens in clinical or skilled nursing settings. And although both kinds of programs have incredible benefits to participants, the goals of creative aging arts education programs are different from therapeutic programs. The therapeutic programs use arts modalities and creative processes to promote wellness, recovery, and rehabilitation through unique personal interactions. Creative aging arts education programs, on the other hand, are instructional arts programs that focus on older adults as art makers and learners. So today we're really focusing on best practices when designing these creative aging arts education programs for older adults. And that's including the importance of incorporating the intentional social engagement opportunities, which are connected to the arts learning. We'll also introduce the in-person model of creative aging arts education, just to illustrate how it may need to be adapted for online learning programs, since those are more likely right now due to the pandemic. But to begin, whether you're doing an in-person program or a virtual program, we're going to suggest arts education best practices to keep in mind to ensure that your older adult students have a higher quality of artistic learning and creative experience. There's some common attributes through all of our creative aging arts education programs. And I've already said one of them, which is that there's sequential classes. This means that it's not a drop-in model. You are providing sequential classes that are going to be building skills over time. The second is that it's taught by a professional teaching artist. And the third is that it's registration based. So whether it's free or you're charging a small fee for it, either way, you're still asking participants to register for this class in advance. And we'll go into a little bit more of that later on. So as I mentioned earlier, this is backed by science as well. And here's a little bit more information about where this comes from. It was developed from this creativity and aging study. And the study proves that arts engagement is especially good for older adults. So this gentleman here, Dr. Gene Cohen, he led that creativity and aging study out of George Washington University in 2006. The study took place over the course of 3 years, and it was done in New York City, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. In each site, there was a control group of older adults who were ages 65 to 103, and they did their usual activities. And then you had the intervention group who participated in professionally conducted art and cultural programs. There were 50 participants in both the control and the intervention groups in all 3 of the sites. Both groups were well matched in terms of their functioning at the start of the study, and overall there was an expected decline in the age group. But instead, the study produced these results, which are that those in the intervention group actually used less medication, they had fewer doctor visits, they had less depression, and overall, they became much more engaged and active in their lives. What Cohen and others discovered is that the aging brain is far more plastic than it had been previously believed to be, and that structured learning, especially through the arts, can improve cognitive functioning, and it can also enhance the quality of life for people overall. We said this a little bit before, but just to go in more depth here, the 2 most important components of creative aging that come out of this study, no matter whether it's delivered in person or online, are there's 2 things you want to focus on, which is that you're developing the mastery of an art form, building skills over time, and that you're also forming community through the art making experience. So just to define those a little bit further, the mastery of skills means that you're learning the art form in depth, and you have the opportunity to practice it and become better at it over time. The social engagement aspect and building community is connected to that art form. And we'll talk a little bit more about how those two things go hand in hand. Because of COVID, obviously a lot of this programming is happening on virtual platforms, and it probably will remain virtual for the foreseeable future. But it's important for us to understand this in-person class model. Tomorrow, we're going to talk a little bit more about how you can adapt your in-person classes to virtual and remote formats and still keep these two main components, the masteries of skills and the community aspects throughout your classes. So the creative aging program has the following components. Number one, it's an arts class. Doesn't matter if it's visual, performing, literary, or music. It is taught by a professional teaching artist, as I said earlier, in a skill that you are developing over a period of time. For this program, for the in-person model, it's 8 weeks. We'll talk about the virtual model, but it's a sequential arts curriculum. This teaching artist is a paid arts educator. They're not a volunteer. As I said, the classes should be at least 8 sessions when you're in person and held in sequential weeks. Usually that's going to look like once a week. The question of why is this the model that we're talking about? Because all these classes are sequential in nature. One skill is building upon another over time. And the minimum 90 minutes each class ensures that there's plenty of time to practice the skills that are taught in the class by your teaching artist, and that you also have time for reflection and feedback in the process. And that's where part of that social engagement component can come in, because you're getting people talking about the work, providing feedback for the participants as well, so that they can grow better at the skills that they're learning. And then the last part that I haven't talked so much about yet is the culminating event. And that's the celebration of the work that you've created over your time together and that you're sharing with family, friends, and other community members. And we'll talk more about what that looks like too. So some of the best practices for these programs, the goal is really to have at least 10 people in each class. The maximum number of students will be dependent upon what kind of art form you're hosting, and it should be determined with the input of your teaching artist. They can give you a little bit more information about what can reasonably be accommodated for that art form. Again, registration is required in creative aging arts education models, and this is to build buy-in and commitment from the students to return from week to week. The last part is that classes can be free or fee-based, but again, you want to make sure that people are registering in advance. You want to make sure that they know that the class is meeting at the same time and the same place every week, and that the expectation and the goal is that they're going to be able to come to every class. Things do come up, of course, life happens, people get sick, but the overall goal is that people are coming and that it's the same group of students who return week after week. This is the model for when people meet in person, and we will talk a little bit about some of the adjustments you'll have to make for remote formats as well. So what's different about adult learners? The first thing that we want to address here is just a question that comes up about the terminology with regards to creative aging programs and their participants. Lifetime Arts uses the term older adults, and that denotes the 55 and better folks that the programs are really designed for. We find this term, as opposed to seniors or elderly, is a wider term for all the people who are encompassed in this work. And oftentimes it's usually preferable to the students and the participants themselves. But you can ask the folks who you work with how would they like to be referred to. And of course, learn their names so you can refer to them by name. You want to make that a part of your class. People have personal opinions about the best word to describe them and their age. And we usually see people using the terminology 55 plus or 55 and better to denote the creative aging class and to let them know that the class is really targeted for them specifically as well. The term creative aging is also used to indicate without having to spell out a specific age. There are characteristics of all adult learners that include older adults that you might want to consider when you're planning these classes. The characteristics may not apply to every adult learner, but some things to keep in mind, like that came up in our group discussion, making assumptions. There's some things that are common, but of course it's not true for everybody. These are just some things to keep in mind. Generally speaking, older adults are going to vote with their feet, and they have very specific goals that they want to accomplish by coming to your class. In other words, they don't have to be there, and they'll leave if it really doesn't fit what they're looking for. they are autonomous and self-directed. So they're going to choose to be in the class because it's really lining up with interests that they have for themselves and the reason that they're making this commitment to come week after week. They also have a lifetime of experience and knowledge, and the teaching artists will encourage older adults to utilize their experience in classes, which really has the potential for expressiveness that's unparalleled. They're bringing all of this life experience to the work that they're making. That experience, I think this also came up in our discussions, can also bring things like narratives. I'm not an artist, I don't know how to do this, I'm too old to learn this skill. And that's something that a teaching artist can work with participants as well to help to break down some of those narratives that we may have developed over time. Adults are, of course, also goal-oriented. They come with an attitude of, if not now, when? And they're serious about it, and they have clear ideas about what they want to learn and how they want to learn it as well. They're also practical, and they want information. Along with having clear goals, they want to use what they're learning and to become better at it as they learn it. They want to successfully apply what they're learning about. And I think there's a blog post here. I don't, did you already put that in there, Julie? Yes, thank you. Sorry, couldn't see the chat. Something else to check out there too about older adult learners. So there's no getting around the fact that we are all aging. As Ashton said, we will all eventually become older. And while we always want to assume ability on the part of our participants, there are some issues that can certainly happen with more frequency as people age. It's important to recognize these as natural changes and just be prepared to address them within your classes. Most of the time, people don't volunteer this information. For example, if someone has difficulty with hearing, it may not become apparent to you or to the teaching artist until we realize over Zoom they can't really hear, or even in person they're having a hard time understanding instruction. A lot of these issues can be handled proactively, and that just means considering things like, how is your space set up? How are your handouts, if you're giving out handouts or assignment sheets to your students over time? How are those designed? And through other non-invasive assessments too, to make sure that, again, we want to focus on the equity and the accessibility for all participants. There's also social and emotional changes that occur as we all get older. And certain events begin to happen. People are losing their spouses, families move away, friends might be moving or dying, unfortunately. And so this is a time where the need to make new social connections is especially crucial. Understandably, concerns about money can also pervade this time as well. So going back to registration, again, you have that choice of, do you want to charge a small fee, or is this something you want to make free for everybody? That social isolation, it's a huge problem, and especially right now, even more so. And it leads to more anxiety. Again, something that Ashton covers in that video. At the same time, we want to introduce a term that is used in the positive aging movement, and that is rewirement. In other words, it's a time when older adults might rethink their hobbies and interests and go through a deep process of really reevaluating what is important to them and how they want to begin to spend their time. Older adulthood might be a time fraught with regret, isolation, confusion, but it can also be looked at as a time of great opportunity and new adventures that can begin. And creative aging really aims to help older adults to experience aging overall as a positive process. So some other things that you want to keep in mind when we're designing a creative aging program, this is where we're going to talk about our SAFE planning skills. We use the acronym SAFE at Lifetime Arts to denote all of the elements of a quality creative aging class, utilizing the older adult learning principle. You may need to do a little bit of extra planning to make sure that these elements are present in an online or remote program. Again, we'll talk more about that. But the elements of SAFE planning are skills, assessment, feedback, and again, engaging socially. Tomorrow, you're going to have the opportunity to take 2 different classes. You'll each be in one of these classes to really understand these principles in action and to see how they work when you're actually in the class with your older adults. Just to give you a little bit more background on it, what do we mean with each of these? Number 1, skills. Again, I've said this before, it's just that the skills are building over time. It's sequential and it's experiential. There's a scaffold and an arc of the workshop, and everything is built in a logical way that really allows students to more fully understand how one skill leads to the next, and it contributes to their own artistic literacy and competency, and it'll be the foundation in which the students begin to see themselves as real learners and artists because they are acquiring these skills over time. The A, our assessment, means that we're evaluating students so that we can tailor the instruction to match the needs of the learners. Community classes really should be barrier-free and welcome to all learners. Of course, what that means is that you have a diversity of entry points and experience. Some people may be more experienced than others, and that's something that the teaching artist will really assess in the room and figure out how to tailor everything so that we're using the best approaches that might be needed for each additional learner that you have. Then we come to our feedback. That's where we're talking about the work, where teaching artists are going to develop a process with their class to ensure that there are opportunities to talk about one another's work. And the strategies that are employed vary from teaching artist to teaching artist, but the goal is the same, which is that student artists can grow in their learning from the feedback as opposed to being torn down by criticism. Again, that goes back to the skill building. They're getting that constructive feedback to help them learn. And then finally, our engagement, that community building and social engagement. It's tied to the art making, and teaching artists, again, will be creating opportunities for students to engage with one another socially through the activities that are connected to the skills that they're learning and that they're practicing. Again, helping to eliminate some of that isolation and to build some of those connections over time. So that was a lot of information, and now I'm going to toss it over to Julie just to give us all a quick break here.
Great, and everybody, as questions come up, or comments, that was, a ton of information, but please go ahead and plop things into the chat. We're going to have Q&A section in just a little bit, and we're happy to collect things as they come up so we can talk about them as a group. I did want to jump in and say, Vinny mentioned that creative aging programs can be free or fee-based. For the libraries, these programs will be free as part of this initiative. I believe that's the case, right, Brian? You can correct if I'm wrong, but these will all be free programs to the participants. So I wanted to jump in there with that. We're going to run and start talking even more in depth about the initiative, but before then, yes, let's take a break. So this is a 2020 break. And this is, as we move through this training, we're often modeling things that we ask our teaching art to do in programs. This is specific to remote programs, but breaks are important in person as well. But since we're all working here in this training remotely for the next few days, just want to invite you to just adjust your gaze so that you can either, let's see, look out a window. I have a window here in front of me. Maybe you've got one to the side. It's your gaze. So you can see something at 20 feet away, ideally, or just the furthest distance from you in your space. And you can just adjust so that, I don't have to necessarily see you, but so you can still hear my voice. So go ahead and something at a good distance away, ideally about 20 feet, and just look at that object for a second. This is called 20-20-20 because I'm actually going to time this, and you're going to gaze at this object and just breathe normally. Ideally, your feet planted in the floor, your bottom nice and grounded in your seat. And you're just going to gaze at this object, trying not to look back at the screen or at your phone, like I'm doing with this timer, for a good 20 seconds, starting now. Just giving your eyes a chance to really focus at this distance. Inhaling and exhaling naturally. Let your feet ground into the floor beneath you. "20 seconds is far too short. Take another breath. Just really letting your gaze focus on this distant object. Good, one last inhale, one last exhale. Shake it out a bit. Come on back to the screen as you can. I'm going to ask you to also take a moment to think to yourself, what's something that you have dreamed of seeing and would study if you just had more time? If you had all the time in the world, maybe this is something you're looking forward to, that retirement idea, or that time when you're going to have more time on your hands. Something that you would love to study if only you had more time. For me, I often bring up tango. I would love to really get in there and study tango. Go ahead and put those ideas in the chat. What's something that you really wish that you had? Annie says screenwriting. great. Only some time to study that form. Rado says how to play the cello. That's wonderful. Gardening, Nicole, great. Yep, these can be art forms, they can be other things, just something you'd love to really focus in on. Sherry says processing natural dyes. Astronomy, Brian, lovely. Richard says learning to play an instrument. Any specific instrument, Richard, in your wildest dreams? Christine says painting, writing, historical research for family history. Great, a bunch of things. Richard says any instrument. Brenda says art, specifically painting. Christine, another vote for cello from Christine. Great. Maybe I can ask, who was it that first? It was Conrado. Could you unmute yourself? Why cello? What, has this been a long dream or new? Or?
I know how to play the saxophone and the flute, but I just kind of, playing a string instrument, that one seems the most enticing.
I love it. And Christine, would you mind unmuting? You had many things. It seems like you're developing a list of all the things you're going to do, you want to study.
I just want to be able to have time to devote to doing the things that I've always put off. I took painting in college and went from looking like a 2-year-old painted it to selling a painting in 1 semester. And so I'd like to develop that a little bit more. I haven't had time. Once you start having children and start being a professional, that's where your life is. You don't spend as much time doing those things that you want to do. And same with writing and doing historical research. I want to go and see all these places that ancestors have lived and write about what they might have gone through and those kind of things. So there's so much that I look forward to.
I love that. Thank you. And I love that what you're talking about is the time, the focus, right? And that these forms, especially arts, but I think all of these things really do build over time. And they really are, they do require sort of the time to really get in and get in deep and explore something over a longer period of time. And that's really what makes you go from A to B, really, but what enables you to start really improving and really getting involved in the art form in a deep way. Right, Nicole, did you have it? What was your answer? Would you mind unmuting?
Gardening or landscaping.
Love it, love it. That's great. Yes, and is that something that you've always had in the back of your mind, or is that a new interest?
Like Christine said, it's just hard to find time to do it when you're working every day. So it'd be nice to just kind of piddle and improve little spots here and there instead of just mowing the grass and getting it over with.
Sure. Right. Yes. Again, going in depth in something. Great. Well, thank you. Yes, we asked that just because many of the thinking behind your own interests in what you want to really focus on is very much the thinking of the older adult participants, and folks you're going to be recruiting to these classes, right? They might have a little bit more time on their hand. It might be something, someone said that Conrado maybe, that something you started with one instrument when you were younger and now you want to try something new. It might be sort of what Christine was saying, is starting, when you did that work in college, you really got to go in depth. You want to go back in depth in that work. So it might be revisiting an art form that, it was part of their lives before. It might be something totally new they've been dreaming of experiencing, or something that honestly came across their desk and they said, actually, I never realized, but I would like to know more about painting, or I would like to explore photography. So just putting ourselves in the mindset of the folks that this initiative is really designed to impact. So we're going to talk about a little bit more about this initiative specifically. Wanted to just bring everybody up to speed on this very exciting initiative. Creative Aging in Wyoming Libraries is what we are calling it. What is it called? So the overarching goal here is improving the lives of Wyoming's older adults in partnership with the Wyoming Arts Council and Wyoming State Library, and with us, Lifetime Arts. We're going to work with selected teaching artists and selected Wyoming public libraries in up to 23 counties to build their capacities to develop, implement, and sustain high quality creative aging programming. So this initiative is going to offer training like what you're doing right now, coupled with seed funding to build the capacity of these stakeholders. So ultimately, we're looking to have library programmers plan and implement up to 46 creative aging programs across the state of Wyoming. It's really exciting, all being designed and facilitated by Wyoming teaching artists. And these programs will be free to participants, as we've mentioned earlier. So the overall program is sort of broken down into 4 phases. We've already been through one, we're in the middle of 2. So the first was planning and prep, which was completed beginning of this year. Next is orientation and training. That's what we're doing right now. We're training libraries. We're also training Wyoming-based teaching artists next week. And then program development. This is the time where folks will really be planning their creative aging programs, marketing, surveying their community to find out what are folks interested in aging in, stuff like that. And then finally, program implementation. This is the time when the programs will actually run with all the participation of older adults in communities. So after completing this training, each participating library is going to be eligible to receive ongoing program support and seed funding to implement creative aging programs for older adults. So Lifetime Arts is going to be providing this ongoing program support to funded organizations. So you not only get some funding, but you also will get a lot of support from Lifetime Arts, personal support for the organizations and their arts partners. So also the teaching artists through scheduled webinars and then also email and phone communication. Our staff, our expert staff, is going to help organizations identify qualified teaching artists and then work with those teaching artists to develop appropriate curricula and assessment protocols. These technical assistance hours is also going to include all kinds of other guidance in budgeting and contracting, marketing and recruitment for the programs, and of course that program design assistance, which is the idea is really to strengthen each project and provide a model for successful and also sustainable programming going forward. The idea of this is some pilot programs so that this stuff really gets seeded in libraries and can continue after this seed funding. So the program can be done in any art form, visual, performing, or literary arts. However, the art form choice really needs to be responsive to the interests of the target audience, the community that we're looking to serve. So surveying is a super important part of our programs, and we're going to go into recommendations on that. But part of the technical assistance phase is going to be assisting organizations to really determine the art form that best reflects the interests of the older adults that they're hoping to serve. Also, all programs are going to be taught by professional teaching artists, and part of the technical assistance phase will be helping libraries identify the right teaching artist for the program you're looking to do. Intentional social engagement is really a big part of, will be embedded into the workshop design. That's something that we will be training teaching artists how to do, but that'll be an important part of what the teaching artist brings to their design of the program, this social engagement piece, which is specific to creative aging programs. And finally, each program will end with a culminating event for the public. This is an important aspect, Vinny mentioned it earlier, of sort of our model of creative aging programs. This culminating event is really a moment where friends and family and members of the broader community are invited to attend and to share in the artwork that's been created. So for this initiative, libraries have the opportunity to offer programs either remotely or in person. So we have no preference. It really is up to the library to decide what's the best format. Remote delivery of creative aging programs is really growing. It's really possible, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that tomorrow, ways you might adapt for remote. But programs can look just like today, a Zoom meeting. They could even be a teleconference program. We have some recommendations on that. We're going to go in more depth about all of that tomorrow in the training, just these differences between in-person and remote delivery, and sort of the adjustments you might need to make to remote delivery, but the ideas are really the same in both. The format of the program is going to vary a little bit depending on the delivery, but of course, what's important is, regardless of method, the programs really need to just keep that focus on sequential skill building, really building those art skills over time and over the course of the program, and that intentional social engagement. You know, did you make a new friend? Did you learn something new? That would be the priority across whatever delivery method is used. There's also always a culminating event, whether you're in person or remote, some kind of culminating sharing. And we'll go into tomorrow some examples of those, both in and remote. So finally, the goal really at the end of this initiative is that up to 700 old adults, and this is 55 and better, 55 to 105 or more, will be participating in these sequential skill building workshops led by professional teaching artists and based on these best practices in arts education. The workshop series will be offered in any of these art forms, and at each site, each series is going to include a culminating event, free and open to the community. So hopefully reaching up to another 1,500 people through this culminating event. So this is sort of our big vision for this initiative, and you all are a really important part of this. That's the nitty gritty on this exciting initiative that Lifetime Arts is thrilled to be a partner in. Now it's time for questions and answers. Anything that just came up on the initiative itself, we are more than happy to answer. Anything otherwise too. We went today over ageism. We talked about why creative aging, our type of creative aging. We spoke about the model. We talked about older adult learners and just adult learners overall. We talked about safe planning and some ideas about the kind of creative aging program. So we went over a lot. So if there's anything you might have a question about, now is the time.
Instead of a
Yeah,
question,
Brian.
I do have a point of clarification I would like to make, and that
Thank you.
is, in the beginning, I meant to kind of say where Jamie Marcus was, our state librarian, who's been very, very much involved in this and really excited about this project too. Well, he called me about 15 minutes before we began to say that he was still in line with Desiree Saunders from the Wild Office getting his first COVID shot. And he said, would you be able to do the little welcome and introduction? And I meant to say that at the beginning and I forgot to do that. So now it's on record and it's in the recording.
That's great, Brian. Thank you. Important to go on record. Christine had a question about the 2020 break. Yes. Yeah, I didn't get into that part. The idea being that ideally every 20 minutes, you're taking 20 seconds to look at an object 20 feet away. If you're working online for an extended amount of time, that would be, that's just a tool, a teaching artist that we work with is when teaching online, with all ages, just to take that bit of a break, refocus your eyes. But I maybe use it, now you can tell your colleagues at work that you're doing. You need to take a 20-second break every 20 minutes. Great. Yeah, and he's like, people stretch every 20 minutes. Yeah. It's important to have those breaks. Any other questions, thoughts, things that are still maybe ringing with you after today? Yeah, Nicole.
I anticipate people saying, oh, this sounds so exciting, but I can't come every Tuesday for 8 weeks, or that's too long, or, what do you recommend we say or do in those situations?
Yeah, Nathan.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So there's a couple things that we help sort of combat this. The first thing is we do have, we call them patron surveys, which help identify what is the art form that people want to take, but that also includes things about like what's the best time of the day and what's the best day, and start to get into that sort of nitty gritty. That can give you just sort of a snapshot of what it is. And then the next thing is that when we talk about like promoting the program and recruiting and marketing the program, one, we're trying to, we talk a lot that often in these programs, or when people are first thinking about creative aging, we try to cast a really wide net because we want to get as many people in the door. But actually in these programs, we're trying to be really specific. We're going to be teaching watercolor painting because people specifically want to learn these skills over this time. So hopefully that with that, there's that underlying note that registration is required. We expect you to come to every class. We understand that things come up, doctor's appointments and things like that. But then for the most part, we want you there. And then the last thing, really specifically, you have this all planned out. It's on Tuesdays. This one person approaches you and says, you know, Tuesday is not the best day for me. What we recommend is that you say, great, you know, can we put you on a waiting list actually? Because this spot is actually most beneficial if you can attend every class. If someone else can attend every class, you know, perhaps the next class will line up with your schedule, but we'll put you on a waiting list in case there is an open slot that you can come in and fill the seats. You know, we want to keep the doors open for as many people as possible. But we also want to really sort of set the expectation that by coming to every class, because it's sequential, if you miss 4 out of the 8 sessions, you're just not going to get what you need to out of it. So what, in our experience, being very upfront with older adults, they understand, and you know, you have the wait list available to them and things like that. I hope that helps.
Yeah, we live in a community where a lot of people go away for the summer or go away for the winter, so I can anticipate some that can come. I mean, we might have to work on the timing so that we're casting them for a frame of time while they're around.
Yeah, that's a really good point, to sort of being aware of what's going on more largely in the community and be adapting to those needs.
Yeah, Annie.
Yeah, I was going to add on to this, and we'll get into this a lot on day 3. I'm Annie. I work with Lifetime Arts too, by the way, but we'll get into this a lot. But part of your surveying and your sort of creating the sort of responsive programming for your patrons can also include, when's the best time for these classes? When can you commit, and where you can get sort of a majority rule sort of assessment of what will work for your community.
I think too, sometimes there might be an initial bit of resistance, like, oh, I can't commit for that long, when actually folks do have the capacity to do that. It just might be not something that they've been asked to do before too. So I think some flexibility too is, you know, as Nathan said, really inspiring them to understand what it is to commit, you know, why that commitment for the whole time. But also know that, you know, sometimes once people actually begin, they actually do end up, you know, under that commitment really deeply, and they do end up coming, even though initially when they see the 8 days, you know, it feels like a lot. Folks do get converted, you know, to some degree once they get in the class. Great. We had a question from Brenda. How do we go about finding teachers? Nathan, yeah.
So there's going to be actually a couple ways to go about this. Next week, we're starting the same training, but for Wyoming teaching artists. And all of those teaching artists are going to be essentially in a pool of people that you can connect with. And we will help you do that after you sort of identify watercolor or memoir or something. We'll sort of look for people in your area and point you to that. But we're also going to help you in other ways. You know, the Wyoming Arts Council is a resource. They are aware beyond the pool of teaching artists from next week, you know, just broader across the state, teaching artists that are in the different areas. And they're also, you know, connected with arts organizations in the different areas that can connect with teaching artists. So, you know, Lifetime Arts will be assisting you with that. The other thing with this whole initiative, though, is that, you know, as you know, community organizations, if you are also aware of a teaching artist, if you have your own referral, that is also something that is of course, you know, you're able to do. The only thing that we encourage you to do is sort of make sure that if you're going to use that teaching artist, that you did do that sort of community assessments and surveying to make sure that it's responsive instead of just saying like, oh, I already have somebody without talking to the community. We'd still want you to be responsive, even if you do have someone in mind.
Great point. Thanks, Nathan. Dean had, can we use the funds to set up a senior van to pick up the registrants? That might help some that are homebound by not being able to drive, especially during inclement weather months, or perhaps set up a partnership with the senior center. Christine, was that the idea?
Yes, I just thought that that might be a way for some of the people to come out. I know we work with a lot of homebound people that would like to be able to do things with other people, but because of not being able to drive, that might be something that holds them back.
Yeah, Nathan, do you want to talk about what the funds can be used for?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And immediately the funds can be used for teaching artist fees and for program expenses, which are, materials. I would like to talk with our partners, but I don't see why that would be a barrier to transportation is a programming expense. So I think that's great. And we have seen many really great, successful, amazing partnerships between libraries and senior centers. So I think this is all, fits into alignment. So that's a great question. I'm gonna sort of say yes. I see that as a program expense, and I don't think that would be a sort of barrier. But I'll talk further with our partners to confirm that that's okay. The other thing, with that, I also don't think that there's other potentials with this partnership development of having the program offsite at a senior center. If that is also, if they have their own transportation, but the problem is that they have to use the transportation to go to their site, potentially the program could happen there so that the cost of the transportation doesn't have to be bringing them to the library, but it's just in partnership to have it at the site. And the other thing that we sort of get excited about talking about is this idea of either people that are at a distance or people that are homebound. And this is another area where the remote programming, outside of, concerns about COVID is access and reaching people that are at a distance. So thinking about how remote delivery of programs can also create opportunities for those folks.
We're going to be speaking a lot over the next 2 days about this idea of partnerships, that exactly, obstacles that you might foresee, maybe, with the library itself being, the location or some of these transportation issues, that's a moment to start to think about these partnerships, and that partnerships might really offer some great solutions to issues that you might see coming, from your organization. Other organizations might really have resources that can help. We'll talk about that. Any other questions? All right, folks. Well, we are here and we'll be here the next 2 days. So collecting something, midnight tonight, a big question about creative aging pops into your head, write it down, put it in the chat, and we'll get to it tomorrow. We do need to poll you all. As we said, tomorrow we are going to start off our day in a class, in a creative aging class. So you'll get to experience that as a participant. We have got some great trainers, including Rena, who's here today, leading these demo classes. We do want to poll you so that we can find out which art form would you prefer for your class tomorrow. We need to give a disclaimer that we're not going to be able to necessarily guarantee you into the one you've requested, but we would like, we'll try our best, but we do want to have groups. So that poll just came up there on the page here on the Zoom, and So go ahead and make that choice. Judy's tomorrow and Wednesday will be in the afternoon training session. Yeah, got it, Judy. That's great. That's totally fine. Okay, cool. So as often happens, everyone's chosen visual arts. I understand performing arts can be a little intimidating. It will not be. So we will have to have a couple of you in the performing arts so we make sure we have balanced groups. Just want to put that disclaimer out, but thank you for your choices. We're going to take care of you regardless of the art form that you're in tomorrow. But thank you for that. Did want to give you a little bit of a warning that, oh, thanks, Brian. Awesome. Brian is taking it for the team. He's going to be in the performing arts class. It's going to be wonderful. Definitely tomorrow, again, have, have your notebook, pen and paper available, but also those of you that do end up being in the visual arts class are going to need to have your phone or a camera or with a photo on it that you feel comfortable sharing with the group. Or I guess this could also be just a physical photo, but many of us just have, it's easy to bring up a photo on our phones, or maybe you have a physical photo, a photo that you have taken, to have that ready to share with the group, because we are going to model some sharing of photos in that photography class with Rhina tomorrow. Wonderful, thank you for that. Some homework, got a little bit of homework for tomorrow. This is again all on the portal, so if you have any portal issues, please know. You're going to watch a video from Aroha Philanthropies, which is specifically about sort of the in-person and online delivery CIS4 creative aging programs. In that case, it is about the transition that a lot of folks made during COVID from in-person to online, just to give you some thoughts for that. Also, adapting creative aging course design for remote delivery, just a PDF that goes over, again, some of our recommendations. If you are thinking about how would I do this remotely, just some thoughts on that. And then our Connect Through Creativity Now blog, which again, it just highlights some remote adaptations for programs. Again, remote programs is not at all required for this initiative. You can be in person if that is good and safe for your community whenever you begin your program, but we do want to just throw some ideas. Sometimes it's hard to envision how creative aging programs happen remotely, but they do, and they've been quite successful during the pandemic. So go ahead and check those out. And Vinny, I'm just going to have you lead us through just a closing ritual. We're ending a little bit early. You can go on with your day, but we do like to close our time together just the way that a teaching artist would in a creative aging.
Thanks, Julie. So just to close us out today, everybody, I like to use this one at the start of trainings just to give you a chance to think about the next couple of days. What are you going to do? So you can either write this down, you can pop it in the chat if you feel like sharing it as well, but just take a moment now and think about, is there any intention that you want to set for yourself on this first day of training? It might be about uncovering a question that you have around creative aging. Maybe it's about discovering something new in the field, or really identifying a specific art form, figuring out what you're looking for in a teaching artist, any kind of intention that you have around this new initiative that you want to set for yourself today. So take a second, think about it. And then if you want to, you can share it. That's great, Brian. Checking out all the portal resources as soon as possible. Wonderful. Julie, exchanging ideas and inspiration about how programs can serve our specific communities. That's excellent. Anybody else care to share any specific intentions that you have? Identifying art forms that might be used. That's so important. There's so many to choose from that sometimes it can feel a little bit overwhelming, but when you, and I think like Nathan was saying, once you get that community survey and some of the tools that we'll offer, can really help to start to figure out like, okay, this is the avenue I need to be looking down. Learning about all the different art forms, definitely. Similarly, just figuring out what's out there and what are people interested in. That's great. Anybody else want to chime in? A few last intentions before we leave it at that? Great. Thanks everyone for joining us today and for sharing. And anything else, Julie, before we wrap it up for today?
That's it. Happy to be here with you. We'll stick on the line for just another second if anyone has individual questions. I want to let everybody go. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. See you all tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, save the chat if you want to. This is Brian. Nice. Take care. Bye, Nicole. Bye, Christine. Bye, Brenda. Bye, Claire. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Nathan, you can stop recording.
Thanks, Brenda. We're excited too. It's great to hear.